Okay, let's talk power window kits. I don't know if in a video from the past I talked about what I got, but these are universal power window kits, and I've used this before. I used this in this, not in that one. Can't remember what I used it in. Can't remember right offhand. Anyway, they're good kits. This is a good kit. But they're for flat windows, straight up and down, and they come with a variety of different pieces so that you can mix and match. But I'm going to use this end. But one thing about universal kits is they're not entirely universal. So in the 30 with the door as thin as it is, taking that and flipping it over, I had to cut all the brackets off because every single one of them stood out. You know, push the assembly too far in to hit the window. So I cut all 3 ears off, right here and right here. And now this guy here, I'm going to weld back on flush with this surface here, which touches the door. And then I measured the stack with the bead here, and I'm going to go up way higher. I'm going to go up to there, and hold it up there. So that's where I'm at. Basically test fit it, put it in, took it out. If I run the assembly all the way to the bottom, you can see in these doors, there's my finger, goes to my knuckle for space. There's nothing in there. So I got to get it up where I can start to get into the space. They say 2.5 inches, and so if I get it up an inch off the floor, I can get it in. And now with those, I'm going to back up there. And now with the fiberglass cover on here, I have room to have bolt heads, sticking on this side and that kind of thing. It was all somewhat planned. I could not get the original window stop out. It was welded to the inner skin from the other side, and I assumed that there were dimples in. I drilled those dimples out. I thought that's where they would do their locates and where the hole would be. In fact, when I pulled the stop out, it indeed, it's hard to tell, that's the top, but there you can see a little portion of the weld down on the side. That one down on the lower right, and there's off the hole completely. So they must put holes in here, dimple that in the press, back in the 1930, and then this, originally was maybe spread a little bit more, but I'm sure when you're on the line, you just slap her in, you line up the top, and wherever the bottom line, you hit it. So I just cut it out. I'll try my luck on the other ones. This is the first one, but at this point, I'm just going after getting the passenger side door set up. I may weld those up, I may not. I mean, not that big of a deal. I think I have to weld one of them up, so if I do crack out the welder to do it, I'll do both of them. So, because this is gonna, I think, touch it. Anyway, the long and the short of it is they're universal, but you start to get back in pre 1930, 32, 33, 34, on that body, the door gets just too thin. So they do fit in, but it takes a lot of work. The motors are really nice and narrow. Real nice unit. And so that's what I got going on. These are just nickel plated, so I'll weld that up. Find the location. I made 4. Oh, and of course they're too tall. I cut them all the way down to the brace, which was 2 cuts. I don't have the other drop. Right there it is. No, that's a different piece. I think I threw it away, but there's about another inch or so. They go up 18. I need 14. I'm going for 15, basically. So, because that's, well, I need 13, but I want to get the window. I'll set it in so that the window is flush with with this edge, which is halfway down that edge, and I'll adjust it when it's in the full up position just to that point. And pardon me, I'll adjust it when it touches here. I'll go all the way down to that point, and then I'll locate where that is on the rail, on this rail, and then I'll run a bolt in or something to give it a stop. So they did come with a little rubber boob on the bottom. I suppose I could yank that out. Yeah, I could yank that out and you know, weld a stop in too, something like that. Anyway, starting on the power windows. So I'm watching the video. It looks like 36 minutes total time. All my little mistakes and recut, you know, touch-ups and everything else I was doing throughout that whole process. So we can see I certainly got good penetration, but I didn't deform. You know, I didn't come through. That's the bottom, but I didn't come through. So my slide's going to work fine. It doesn't ride on that. That's grease channel, but I mean it doesn't ride on that surface. It rides on this surface here and underneath. You can see it. Okay. So my top brackets, my bottom brackets. I did TIG weld this one. It had you know, less buildup and less material, but I set up the MIG when I fixed the door, and what's the difference, right? I got it in. So now all these are made 36 minutes. Now how long would it have taken to go do one, install it in the door, come back, do another one? You know, that travel time is going to kill you. So now all these are ready. They're cut to length. They're ready to go. And now I just got to drill the doors out. I got my locations. I made the paper pattern for the tops of the doors. There isn't a lot, you know, you can see I didn't use any type of precision jigging other than keeping things flush with the magnet and stuff like that. Marking my lines. You know, so the opportunity to be off just a little bit exists, but you need adjustment anyway, right? So I'll oversize the holes when I mount them to the door. First one I didn't. Actually, I went a 32nd over on the 1/4 inch on this one. You can see the hole above is a 1/4 inch. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, but this is a 32nd over. And then this one I wound up having to slot down a little bit. And I probably will, I don't know, if I hit it dead on, it doesn't matter, right? If I hit it dead on. However, there needs to be some adjustment when all is said and done, this way and that way, once you get the glass, and depending on, you know, there's a lot of variables, right? You don't get the glass perfectly flat, the glass isn't cut perfectly parallel, those kinds of things. So this would have to be able to move. Just like on factory cars, there's a slot in the bottom. You run the window up and down, and you find that happy zone in there. And that more than likely will be the case. And then in order, of course, to be able to rock that end, these holes will have to be a little bit bigger, you know, to allow for that. You've got some movement, you know, some flex in the channel, some, you know, maybe a 1/4 of an inch at the bottom, relatively speaking. But anyway, so I took a little bit off the top of each of these because I found that they come in contact with the center of the door earlier, even though it's a manufactured piece. You saw me stop a little bit earlier when what the heck was happening? When I was and then I stopped and measured the lengths. There is a difference. They're pretty consistent, but the second batch was 1/8 of an inch shorter, basically, than the first batch. So I left him long. So on that particular piece, so all's good. They're the same, and we can move forward. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, so now I've modified. I will have to weld a plate in here. The wiring will run right behind and underneath this, so that'll keep the wiring on this side of the window. Of course, we're what, an inch, a little better than an inch, you know, probably 1.5 inch total travel needed to get the window down. This wiring, of course, will be retained, so it stays on this side. Very easy to do. This, of course, is the door harness, and then this is the popper. There's a relay in here and a ground. Remember, I'm running the ground from back through this hinge, and you know, so on and so forth. So this is my incoming power. The yellow is for the windows. I don't have a connector in there yet. That'll go to the switch. I have the motor. I'll have to weld an ear on. There's one brace, but it's in this it's bolted to the motor, and I'll have to weld an ear on right there to run a brace in, or a bolt in, but it's a recess, so the bolt head will be beneath. This bolt head is beneath. That's the bracket that I just cut off and re-welded on flush. And then, yes, I made a paper template for this. Okay, top of door, motor on that side, so the motor is on that side. I put that line right there and drilled that first set of holes. It's supposed to be right there. Anyway, so I got that going for me. So the piece of 12 gauge is welded on. That gives me the dimension to push the glass to the right location. The glass is plexiglass in this example. It's just a piece of waste. With the vice grip, I'm simulating the mount. The tube I'm running up, and then it's on the other side of the window channel here because that's the most room. I found in testing these motors that the more, just a bench test, the more you curl that hose, the spring or the rack, if you will. I call it a spring, but it's probably is a spring, but it travels down and it follows up that hose to keep it from going where it's not supposed to go. Now, because I'm reducing the travel, but I'm using the lower half, my spring is using most of that hose, so I can't really shorten the hose. If I had a taller door and I used the top side, more of the top side of the channel, I could cut off some of that hose, but I chose to take it from the top because I wanted to move this up as high as possible. The motor's up. I can touch the door. In fact, I could probably put an ear right here. That might be better than way back here. So we'll consider that, because that'll just hold it, right? Just hold it away. Anyway, I'm going to snap you into the tripod here. Whoops. And I got a jump starter / charger. I'm going to put it on 35 amps and then turn him on. And we want to go up, so typically red on these things is positive up, typically. And of course my cabling was running underneath the feet of the, let me get you in a better position. There we go. Goes up. Woo! She flies on the down. And I'll stop about right there, mark it, and put a turn this off. Mark it so I can put the stop in. So now I just have to copy this setup 3 more times, but I'll copy it all onto the individual assemblies. Put all the brackets and stuff on, and then I just have to mark the door because I know it fits in this scenario. So worked out well. Okay, so I've got it bent. It'll go in behind. I'll clean this off. Excuse me. I drilled 2 holes. And now this is down in the door somewhere. I'll get back to you. Okay, dug it out of the bottom of the door, and then I just quick screwed this on. So that's the spacer, that's that. This will flip up. Like that. It's catching the wire, excuse me for a second there. And then, there. So it'll grab, I'll plug weld those 2 holes so I can grind them flush. That'll pull the motor closer to this side. So I'm not touching the interior panel, I'm not touching the exterior panel, but I'm retained. That's the goal. So I'm thinking this little spacer that that spaces the motor back behind that bend, I want to weld it on. I hate having to fiddle fart with a piece of tubing back in there. So this is the nut I cut off of here on that side, and I'm just going to center it up and get a couple of tacks in there, a couple 3 maybe tacks in there. My only concern, you know, this flags out that far, right? So because it flags out that far to this hole right here, is it going to prevent me getting the motor off? But I know I need to pull that out, and I need to shift the motor over. And if I can do that, great. If I can't, that's not so great, because I'll clean these up, but I have to plug weld it on, and it's permanent. And if it's interfering, you know, that's going to cause a problem. But I hate having to stick those spacers in there. That's what's going through my brain right now. You know, I suppose I could run a couple screws in there and test it. How frustrating. How frustrating. Because that spacer keeps it out. I think I'm going to leave the tube off. You're going to put it on. I think it's important that this clears, because it's going to hit the step at spacers to get past this depth here, and it's going to this surface. So once you know, the motor's on, so you can't go any farther that way, and I can drop, so it will drop an inch or so down to the bottom, relatively speaking, but the motor will be up against there, and I'll be working my way around a little nubbin. So I think this is the area where you take the motor off before you pull the regulator out. So the spacer's going to be piece 2. It's just going to have to be. So the other thing is that this, you know, each regulator comes with that bracket, and I'm using that bracket to make it. So I'll need to make 4, but I don't have, the other box isn't broken yet to get everything out of it. That's the first box, which is two assemblies, right and left. So what it is, I just copied my bracket onto power window instructions so that I can measure and continue manufacturing the rest of them. So okay, ground cleaned up, clamped that on, plug welded nice and rigid to the door, not touching here. Well, it's not hitting the other side. Made 2 plugs, tacked them in. Now I got to get everything out of here. Got to get it all out of here, and I'll clean this up. And then this side is done, and all I have left to do then is 3 more of them. So let's get rolling. Alrighty then, unloaded all the boxes. This is from the first one. These are loose. I'll start disassembling the other three. I got my sample piece right here, and start building copies of this. So that is the plan. Set up a little production line. Isolate the motors. I set up a cardboard box over there. I'll put all the motors over there. Cover them all. But I'm an ex-manufacturing guy for many, many, many years, and this is how I like to do things. Everything the same. So I know the doors are the same. I've been in and out of them so gosh dang many times that other than the fact that the motor, you know, on a traditional car, the motor points toward the hinges on these. This motor will point towards the front on these because it's got to loop around. It happens to be a suicide door, but the electric windows don't know that. So as long as we don't tell them, it's gonna work fine. So yeah, so in like Flynn and ready to race. Hey, sorry I didn't pull you in here earlier. It's just that I typically quit at 5 o'clock and it's 4:25 right now, and I had 57 things to do, and then finish this up. My intentions were to get all 4 doors done, but I did not, because in this one the motor points to the front, so these are both passenger side on a typical car, passenger side doors. You know, the instructions say motor to the front of the vehicle, but that's for clearance, and no big deal. Motor to the front of the vehicle, again, no big deal. The motor doesn't know what direction it's going. However, she packs in there tight. I got not a whole heck of a lot. Let me see what I can do here. So the tube runs up the side. It's beside the, how can I do this? It's just beside the run channel, which is good. But basically the window on this one is 24 3/4. The front was 25. I took 1/8 of an inch off of it. It could be a 1/16 because it was snug when it was going up and down. This is now 24 7/8. I think 25 is just going to be a little too proud for, those are used door seals, and it's just going to be in the way. I thought this was 24 13/16 until I measured it 4 more times. It's 24 3/4 when you get your tape measure hooked on the end correctly. So those are plexiglass. Oh, and then I had, I don't know if you noticed because I didn't show you, I built the rear window and immediately hit the bottom. That's the fender. And so I relieved that. It is below, that's the amount that's below this area. That's actually about a 1/2 of an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch below the top of the door. So it'll be underneath there, but it allows the window to go all the way down. Off to May. And so I got everything in. I got the wires routed, welded in my bracket. This web is thicker than this web, so the motor, although everything sits right, it's just plain different in that regard. That web would be the width of this web. In looking at them, you could probably see, I'm not going to grab a tape measure, but this web is a little wider, and those are just, the stampings are extremely similar, but this door is a little bit narrower. Even when I made the panels, I have to trim the rear door panel. I have to trim about 1/4 of an inch off of it. But this is up and running. These are metric that come with the package, so I went and got some Allen because it just kind of follows what I'm trying to do with all of that. This tab goes for the wiring. This tab will go for the wiring, but these are the connectors now. And again, it's reversed, so I mounted the relays. I purchased 40 amp relays with the mounting bracket for convenience. This holds the wiring to keep it on this side of the glass, as does, where is it at here? Oh, I'm chasing down, yeah, right here. That is one. That slot was in the door. And yeah, and then this is the other one, and it's just taut. Not high stress, but it can't slide in and hit the glass. So I got the other side of the vehicle to do, and that'll be tomorrow. Geez, I thought I could do this in a day. The thing is this went very fast, but the nuances for routing and all that just kind of grabbed me into thinking again. But now that I've done it, I just have to mirror it over there and this over there. So I would assume that I could be done in a couple, 3 or 4 hours over there. I made a paper template. That was freaking phenomenal. And that's what I was just dreaming, you know. This screw was right next to the rivet nut. You won't be able to see it in there. You can see the rivet nut sticking out. So I had to notch the plate out to clear the rivet nut. You know, just the nuances that occur. Anyway, I made a template to channel down here and locate that bottom, and that worked out dandy. I just been coming up with ideas. Anyway, everything is going to plan. Everything, the wiring's mounted. Both windows work. Both windows go up and down. But between cutting a new window and coming up with a few things, because this motor is on the opposite side of the door panel. Same side as the door panels both, but the clearance is completely different when you flip it over, when you flip the thing over. So that's okay. I guess if I would have mirrored this bracket on the same side, then I would have had that clearance resolved, because the center line is up the center of these holes basically, and that was the distance. Actually, if I would have mirrored the bracket, I would have moved those back. But I'm sticking with it. Just didn't predict that, but it's not a big deal. Everything mounts in. Everything's good to go. Tomorrow is a new day. I'll get that other side on, then I got to go through the wiring, and I'll drag you through it. Well, you can see behind the panels there that door is done. That door is done. That door is done. And this door is done. So I did everything, including the wire routing. Now we're on to electrical. And on the rear doors, well, first off, all the switches are going to go into this pocket. You know, I need this extra depth for the wiring. We'll look at that in a moment. And if I have to move this just a little bit, I'll move it. But the handle won't be in this location, but I think I can snake in there for the switch. But the wiring needs to run then from this and up, and not come in contact with the glass. You can see in the panel, everything is tied back. Okay. I also learned on the tube, this tube, this here tube, the one I'm getting out. So that's the chase. I learned, wrapping up the other side, you know, it's rather than cut it, it'll fit right up into here, and it'll tuck very hard there, Okay, and you can see the window channel right down here. I can tuck it behind there. It will tuck behind there, run all the way up and into here, which would retain it. I may have to determine another method for retaining it down low, but it will hold it in there. It's just the perfect fit. So I'll do that on the front side. Same thing. I'll go up into here. I don't even know where that wire oh, he's just laying over there. And he'll go up there, and they go up just a little ways, but that'll hold that thing from flopping around, so I don't necessarily need to trim him. So same plate, you know, you got the whole handle here. It'll be in the front of the handle on the front doors, and behind the handle on the rear doors. And so what comes with the kit is the standard run-of-the-mill, you know, plastic pieces. I mounted that same setup in my 37 Dodge, the patina truck, and they work well. I learned a lot in this process, because in that truck the doors were tall enough. It was basically a direct, you know, just, they're made for 30s vehicles. It was a direct bolt in. The door cavities were considerably deeper, and everything came together well. It wasn't the same brand as this. This is a very, very, very nice setup. I'm very pleased with it. So then you get to the door switches, and many of you probably know this, but on these switches, the B plus is the center leg. These two are ground, and the outside two are the motor, and they just switch the B plus and isolate the ground, so that you get a B plus on this side or a B plus on this side. The ground condition exists on the rest of the pins all the time. When you push the switch, it removes the ground and sends the battery signal. Now you could go bad on the outside and ground in the middle, and I actually considered that, but then all of the wires are live B plus to the motor, which is not a big deal. B plus is 12 volts. B plus on both sides is still 0 volts, right? They're canceling, but the issue is then you've got live wires running down there 100% of the time. You should have grounds running down there 100% of the time. So I've got a couple of issues. I am not wiring the entire, I am not wiring the double pod. I don't know where that is. I have no idea. I got the single pods, and I must have carried the double pod away already. But the pod with 2 switches in it, you know, it's a 4-door. So I technically need to put 2 of those in, which would look horrible. So this is the harness for the double pod right here, where they tie together, so you can control the door on the another door window switch with it. I'll be splitting these up and rerunning the wires. I'll just take both of them and split them up to run that. But each door will have its independent switch. The driver's door will not operate all 4 windows. If you recall from earlier videos, this vehicle was, I wired power for the windows, power for the door poppers, and then ground through the door chassis into a grounding wire that's isolated to the doors, and carries that ground into the chassis. So I have positive battery connections, positive ground connections. I'm using the power window fuse setup that's already in the fuse box that I have in it, so I won't need this isolated fuse setup. And it'll just be overall cleaner that way. You can see on the depth of these, though, they run a pretty good distance in. So and I'll need to immediately turn down, probably perpendicular to this, in this manner right here. I'll need to immediately go in and turn straight down, and then I'll retain the wire on the high side and on the low side so it doesn't interfere with the window because my cavities are so narrow. Another point is that in all these kits, there are female barrel connections at the motor, which is kind of interesting. So if you test it and it's backwards, this would be an easy fix. Just swap them from side to side. But the other thing is these switches go into here in this manner or in this manner, which provides the same effect of reversing. Of course, you'd have to rotate. If your switch orientation was always this way, you'd actually rotate this. So my goal is to get it right the first time, wire it consistently from door to door. I'll have to lengthen the wires, but I can use the wire from here, but it's going to require me to pull the connectors out of the pull the wire spades out of the connectors so that I can run continuous wire down to the motors. So I'm going to begin by getting everything kind of tied out and ready to go, and run down to the of course run down to the battery plus, that center leg. I'll make sure that he can run down to the battery plus connector that's already there, and then these two will go to a ring terminal that'll be mounted to the door, which would probably be also one of the wire retainers. So or the cable retainers that I have in the door, and it just for sake of simplicity, and then I'll just simply have to run my motor wires down to the motor. So I'm going to get after that, and I'll show you the progress on it. Okay, got the harnesses built. Got one sitting right there, the exact same thing right here. I used the existing harnesses because they came with everything, and basically just had to put a ring terminal on the two grounds. In the case of the front doors, these are the cables that came with. The length works. It's probably not that ironic. I'll go down through the door at this location with the rubber grommet. That'll retain it, and the ground will be right here, so it'll have strain. Well, the ground won't have strain relief, but I mean the wire won't fall away. And so in that sense, the ground will be on the outside, and the switch will allow for, placement that way. These wires will run down the door. I will likely retain them. I don't know yet. I may, because the motor is here on both front doors, maybe come around in the front of the motor and put a retainer screw in this recess. This is all where the panel surface is, right here. This elevation with the reset screws is not even 1/8 of an inch above this door. So it's important to me that I don't have a screw head sticking out here. And that's kind of, everything up here is on the, back up. Everything on here is behind that 1.5-inch panel. But everything from this point down, I have to use this area, this chunk of real estate for retention. Or a clip, on this edge, something like that. But I'll address that when I get to it. On the rear doors, again, use the harness. Came with this this wrap, so that allows me to come down from the switch down the door channel, get a retainer, something holding it in, drop it down farther. Probably hold this, because again, that loops. It comes in to the hinge from the opposite side of the door, and then it loops back, and then some extra length there to go down, of course, well under the glass and connect to the motor. So I have to put barrel ends on that and spade, and a male spade on that to finish it out. Alrighty. Grounds run. Connections made through a rubber bushing. I zip tied this so it can't go down. Strapped right here and tied into the motor. You can see behind there it's tied into the motor. I am going to zip tie this stuff down so there's no opportunity for it to hit the window. Same thing here. This one, I didn't put a grommet. I used that tubing because I wanted this just straight down, and that worked. Where am I at here? With my finger. Right there. Oh, you can't even see it, but it's right up against the side. It stayed nice and close. Everything is run. The wires of the motor I left out. Left accessible for now. Those can get zip tied to the tube or whatever on the rear doors. Front doors and rear doors are constructed. The rear doors were constructed the same and the front doors were constructed the same. In other words, there's a clamp here and the routing goes underneath all of it over to the motor, and the power connector is right there. You can see it right there. So everything works out good. I threw a ground clamp on the body and I unplugged the window from the wiring harness, the window lead. So let's give it a whirl. Not that one, that one. So now we should have, yeah. So now we got that one lit up. Okay. Okay. We've already tested them all the way up and down. We just need to test the connections to make sure the direction goes right. Oh, there it is. And this one's down. Success. The window installation was a success. Excellent.